In 1998, the Avengers relaunched again. Now, they just relaunched basically 2 years earlier with Heroes Reborn, and that was a temporary storyline that saw a lot of the Image creators, or Marvel creators, who became Image creators and came back to Marvel to really take on and give their vision for how these comics should be, how the core characters outside the X-Men should be. And they put their stamp on it. It was well-selling, but not necessarily well-received. That era was not necessarily seen as the best of comics. And so 2 years later, a little less than 2 years later, in 1998, things got back to the core Marvel Universe, and we saw a different take on the Avengers again with a new #1 issue. Heroes return. Let's do this. Hey everybody, this is Perch. I'm looking at Heroes Return. This is the Avengers, and we just come out of the Extreme era, and so what we went back into was could not have been more kind of the opposite of that. We had Kurt Busiek, we had George Perez as the writer and the artist. Couldn't think of kind of two very different styles in both writing and art than Rob Liefeld and Chap Yap. Ian Churchill had been part of the Heroes Return, or Heroes Reborn, I should say, era. So Busiek and Perez took an interesting take, and what we got was a larger than normal issue. And I like to compare this back to the 1963 issue, which had 22 pages of comic that was just an incredible amount. I mean, you got tired reading this, in a good way, tired reading this 22 pages. And this was a larger issue, certainly bigger in size, but did try and pack a lot in. So the concept that came in was, the Avengers are back. We've got some bad things happening. Basically, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Crystal are interrupted during a nice dinner. We've got trolls and what looks like parademons. They were not, but George Perez is going to George Perez, and they basically things are happening. Like strange mishaps are happening around the Earth that the Swordsman's dealing with, that Magdalene's dealing with, that Hawkeye and Hercules and the Living Lightning, basically all the different Avengers. And so we get over a couple pages, we see how this chaos is being kind of unveiled around the world, in San Francisco, in Queens, in Denver, in Las Vegas, in the Bronx, certainly in other parts of the world. Interesting shot of the Twin Towers there. It's interesting how things date comics. But we basically get a really nice kind of walkthrough of all the different Avengers over the years. And lots of wonderful panels of Perez showing, we jump right into the action. So to Busiek's immense credit here, we don't waste time with a lot of setup. We get, a threat is here. What's going on? This is ridiculous. And characters are fighting for their lives. All the different Avengers over the, basically 3 decades are fighting. And then suddenly, the enemies that they're fighting vanish in a giant puff of light, and so it begins. So back at the Avengers Mansion, we're hearing about how there's been some bizarre attacks are going on. Some things may be reforming in the wake of the Heroes Return. There hasn't been an Avengers team, and it's time there's an Avengers team again. And now there's this mysterious threat. So Jarvis comes in, it gives some tea to a lot of the original members. We step right into the Wasp, Giant Man, Captain America, Iron Man. This is right back to 1963. It's a team that's familiar. Maybe not the outfits and the costumes are familiar, but it's something we all know. And in comes Thor. He's kind of the last member of this group that really is seen as the quintessential original Avengers. And there is a major problem. Thor's been beat up. He has traveled far, and there is a huge, massive threat, and we're all in danger. So they vow to bond together, and Jarvis walks in right as we get Avengers assemble with the original Avengers: Giant Man, Iron Man, Wasp, Captain America, Thor. And in comes very quickly Chapter 2. Here's Hawkeye, here's Scarlet Witch, and basically all the Avengers are assembling. Everyone from Black Widow to Miss Marvel to Aaron Stack to Tigra, they're all here. George Perez is basically giving the pencils a workout as he's He's drawing everyone. He's basically getting through all the Avengers that are there. We're even explaining in this comic the people who can't make it. So the people from the years who are in the West Coast Avengers, or the people who are deceased, the Fantastic Four, the Hulk has no interest, and basically they walk through the threat. They even do some nice visual gags of no one wants to sit next to D-Man because he's homeless and probably smells. And we're seeing everyone, everyone from Carol, Captain Marvel, to Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, better Captain Marvel. Sorry, just saying. I've always got a soft spot for Monica Rambeau. And even the Sandman is there. We see a couple of people leaving. Spider-Man says, "Hey, I'm not able to help because I've got some other things going on." So we're refining the audience a little bit, but we were reminded of everything that's going on. We see that Thor has been on a quest where Asgard seems to be destroyed and gone. He's finding nothing. The Rainbow Bridge is broken, and he was teleported away to see, the various kind of the Infinity Gems and all the different elements. We start laying some groundwork for Kang. This would become a character really important later in Busiek's run. And off they go to kind of investigate, what's going on. And the amount of page by page, and again, hats off to Busiek. He definitely did not skimp on bringing all the different pieces of Avengers, which is going to be very, very difficult. Everything from Rick Jones and his wheelchair, because he was injured at the time, to the Black Knight's horse. Moon Knight is there. It's just incredible, kind of the amount of sewing together of different plot lines that was accomplished here. It required, heavy amount of skill, of remembering, of editorial capabilities to really pull all these threads back together. But the Avengers head into the Maelstrom, and they head to the Twilight Sword. Again, this is something that would come up later in Busiek's run. And we're in the midst of getting some big action, planes crashing, other things. We're even getting Captain America checking in on, how D-Man is faring as he's homeless. A plot line that was always slightly confusing. And they come into contact immediately with Mordred and kidnap Scarlet Witch, take her off the board. We get an immediate attack. The Avengers are trying to sort things out, but they are fall into the hands of Morgan Le Fay. She's going to be the big bad for this issue, which is nice. They moved away from Loki, who had been part of the last two relaunches, and Morgan Le Fay basically has some magic, does a trick that involves the Scarlet Witch, and uses her magic, which then creates the sky to go to white and erase reality. Is what happens. So what happens, that's how the issue ends on a cliffhanger. We're going to go right into, that leads right into issue 2, and some of the things that are going on where we see that the Avengers have been kind of recast as medieval guardians of Morgan Le Fay, and a classic brainwashing kind of technique. But this was ultimately going to bring back Wonder Man, and keep in mind this is happening, several years before House of M. And it's hard if you came into comics later, you can't help but notice that there's a lot of storylines from Bendis and a couple of writers that would come in future Avengers arcs that really drew from some of the themes here. Morgan Le Fay would be part of the Dark Avengers relaunch. And this isn't copying. I mean, this is creators who are leveraging each other's work, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this storyline would go for 3 issues as we sort it all out. And then finally in issue 4, we get down to who the core Avengers team is. So we allow George Perez to basically play with this full roster for 3 issues, which is really pretty amazing. You get some great artwork and some great storytelling over basically 3 issues. And Perez would stay on the title for quite a while, and I think wound up telling some really great Avengers stories. We got a lot of kind of interesting handling of how Miss Marvel's alcoholism and some parts of Thor and characters who had died with the Grim Reaper. And we got a lot of teasing of what would happen with the Scarlet Witch years later in Avengers Disassembled. But a lot of the groundwork was laid right here in these comics. So pretty impressive. In my mind, for my money, this was one of the better Avengers relaunches that was seen. It did a great job of showing the entire team and everyone that was there. It was very impressive in all the different pieces it pulled together and all the threads that we saw. And that's all good stuff. So I recommend this issue highly. This is one of my, we had the first one back in '63. We had this one. This is probably my second favorite of the Avengers roster of a relaunch, because it gave us action. It gave us lots of characters. It gave us some great characterization and writing. And I just think it's really impressive what was ultimately done here. So we're wandering into a more troubled time as we go through a lot more relaunches and more decompression, unfortunately. So we'll get into that next. But what did you think of this issue? Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you like. Busiek and Perez just make an amazing team for my money. And curious what you think. I thought this was a well-crafted comic book. But leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, recommend to a friend. We're going to keep going through all the Avengers #1 relaunches. So follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for listening.